everyone. So today I'll be talking about the significance of a trade imbalance and why the U.S. has a big or a massive, huge trade imbalance with other countries. And this isn't just with China. I mean, this is with other countries also, like even with countries that produce oil, for example, and all kinds of natural resources in countries all over the world, like countries in Africa, countries in South America, countries in the Middle East, Asia, and wherever, just about everywhere in the world. But today I'll be just focusing on two things: trade imbalances with China and how much oil is imported into the United States from other countries. So those two are the main things. And I just want to talk about those two things because if I talk about any more, it would just be beyond. I would just spend way too much time on it. So I'm just going to focus on those two topics. So trade imbalance with China that the U.S. has. As you can see in this graph, the blue represents how much China is importing to the United States, and the red represents how much the U.S. is exporting to China. So this is how much the U.S. is sending to China, billions of dollars in terms of goods. This is how much China is sending to the United States in billions of dollars of goods. Okay, so we're going to start with 2011. The total exports to China from the United States was $104.121 billion. And how much was exported from China was $399.371 billion. So you have a trade imbalance of $295.25 billion. So that's called a trade deficit. And next year, you could read this. I'm not going to read everything here. It's just going to be boring if I do. So import is from China is 425.619 billion. Export is 101.516 billion. So the trade imbalance was $315.103 billion in 2012. Now we just forwarded up to 2021. The total import from China was 506.366 billion, and what was exported or sent to China was $151.065 billion. So a trade imbalance of $355.021 billion. So what's the significance of this? I mean, is the United States getting ripped off by China? I don't agree with that. The party that is getting ripped off is the party that isn't the party that is exporting more than what they're importing. So for example, a good analogy would be kind of like if I buy something with a check, right? So let's say I bought $100 worth of gardening supplies from Home Depot, right? And I don't give, but I use my debit card to purchase that $100 worth of gardening supplies from Home Depot, right? So my bank account should have $100 to cover the $100 that I spent at Home Depot, right? So Home Depot debits my card and they take out $100 from my bank deficit means. You hear a lot of stuff from like right-wingers saying that this trade balance is bad and all this stuff. But I'm telling you, if you're able to do this, you're better off for it, because you're getting something for nothing. You see, that's the thing about it. So every year you have a trade deficit with this balance of trade with China is negative, right? And the money that we use is not gold or silver, right? The money that we had prior to 1971, I'm not sure if it was 71 or 72. Okay, 71, gold standard was abolished. Okay. Before that, money was gold. So after 1971, money is not gold anymore. This is not gold. This becomes currency or fiat currency. So this type of money can be printed out of thin air. Okay, so it's not it's, you could say it's backed up by the GDP, or the gross domestic product of a country, like how much a country produces. That could give the currency its value, or how much military power this country has and how much it could exert it on other countries. Your country could be backed up by force as well. Yes, and the number of people in your country that pay taxes could be backed up by that as well, because currency is used to pay taxes, right, and conduct trade. So the US dollar is a world reserve currency, right? So this means all the trade that is conducted in this world is done through US dollars. So if, let's say, Belgium, for example, wants to get oil and other stuff to for their economy, which they need, then they have to sell stuff to the United States for dollars, right? They get the dollars, and then they're able to buy whatever they need. And this goes for every other country in the world as well. Let's say a country like Nepal would need to do the same thing, or India, or Singapore, or Argentina, or whatever. They cannot use their currency to buy stuff, right? Because most countries simply won't accept it. They're not going to accept pesos for trade, right? The only currencies that are currently accepted right now are euros and I guess dollars, accepted for international trade, but mostly dollars. But that has been changing over the years, and this is why the US is able to have these trade imbalances and get away with it, you know, because most of the world can't do this. They cannot get away with this kind of stuff, you know. And this is why the US is able to import more oil than they can produce. So, for example, in this chart right here, you have oil imports per year in billions of barrels of oil. So in 2015, the U.S. imported 2.662 billion barrels of oil. that's how much oil was imported into the United States. And if we divide it by 365 days, that's 7.293 million barrels of oil that the U.S. imported. And now we forwarded up to 2021. U.S. imported 2.19899 billion barrels of oil. That's about 6.024 million barrels of oil per day. And as you can see this chart right here, this is how much oil was imported into the United States by year, 2015 to 2021. As you can see, there's a slight decline, I guess because the economy is kind of like slowing down. And in barrels per millions of barrels per day, it's also, you have the same kind of curve, it's the same kind of graph, as you can see. And according to Google, the U.S. imports about 8.47 million barrels of oil. This is an average, so my numbers are pretty close. From, you can see here, in 2015, the U.S. imported about 7.293 million barrels of oil. 2021, 6,024,000 barrels of oil. And let's see if that's correct. 2.19899 times 1 billion divided by 265 comes out to that, as you can see. And let's see, 2016 comes out to about that as well. That's a million, so we divide it by 1 million. I got 7.687 million barrels. So, as you can see, the U.S. is definitely importing more than what they are producing, and they're able to do this because they have a world reserve currency. And we have massive not only trade deficits and deficits in energy, we also have a huge national debt. National debt is how much right now? 30 trillion 418 billion 116 million 204 this number keeps changing, 300,595 trillion dollars altogether. And this is accruing, this is going up because the interest is accruing on this debt, so that's why it's accruing. And this is, and you know what, the politicians here don't care about the national debt because we have the world reserve currency right now, that is, but that could change in the future. We don't know what's going to happen in the future because you see all these problems that we're having in the world with Russia saying that we're going to only accept rubles for our oil. And this is kind of like a backlash of this world reserve currency status, and how the U.S. is embargoing countries and bullying them with their reserve currency status. And you see stuff like Saudi Arabia now talking about accepting Chinese yuan for their oil, and Russia, like I said, accepting only rubles from countries that are not friendly to Russia. What's the significance of that? they do not accept dollars for oil, then what must happen is, if other countries want to buy this oil from Russia, they must sell stuff to Russia to buy their oil. And what happens when this happens? That means they don't have to use dollars to transact and find their natural resources. And what does that do? That diminishes the power of the dollar, right? The same thing with Saudi Arabia. When they're saying that we will accept Chinese yuan for our oil, this is kind of like undoing what the U.S. did back in 1973 by getting Saudi Arabia to accept only dollars for oil, and as a result, every OPEC country or oil producing country did the same. But this is going to change because in business, you need something to sell, right? And China has a lot of stuff to sell to the world because they produce a lot of things, right? And of course the US produces a lot of things as well, but I guess if you produce more things, then other countries will see value in your currency because they could use that currency to buy your stuff that they want, right? So that's what I think about it. That's my take on it. But I would like to hear about what you think about this as well. And this is why I think that we have trade balances with other countries. A lot of trade balances, because definitely you're consuming more energy in the US and consuming more stuff. That's why people are able to have a very good standard of living in America, in the United States, compared to other parts of the world. Because in most parts of the world, people have food insecurity, right? You don't have a lot of obesity in most parts of the world, and food is almost never wasted, right? And in order to get an excess of material goods, you must have a lot of oil, you must have a lot of stuff, goods, which are imported from other countries and stuff like that. And why do you have this trade imbalance? There's another angle to this. It's because the cost of labor in the United States is too expensive, right? And this is also due to having the world reserve currency. If you have a currency that everyone wants for international trade, then your currency value will go up in value compared to other currencies around the world. So you have a very strong currency, right? So if you have a very strong currency, then you're able to import more than you're able to export. But for most countries around the world, that's just not possible. You know, they can't get away with this. They can't get away with trade deficits. They can't get away with giving blank checks to other people and getting stuff for free. Why? I wouldn't say for free, but I guess the U.S. is able to export their currency and most countries around this world must export real things like oil, crops, cash crops, automobiles, parts for machines, natural gas, bauxite, copper, iron ore, ships, engines, etc. But we will see what happens in the future if the US loses its reserve currency status, or if there are competing currencies which are used in international trade in addition to the US dollar. Because I don't think the US dollar is going to just like go away. There will be countries that use US dollars. There will be countries that use Chinese yuan. There will be countries that use euros and other currencies as well. But back in the 1900s and 1920s and stuff, when the British sterling or pound was kind of like the world reserve currency, they were using dollars for international trade, along with British pound sterling, which was the world reserve currency at that time in the early part of the 20th century. But this is probably what we're going to see in the future. And as for the price of imports like oil, it is definitely getting more expensive. Let's look at the price of a barrel of oil. $110.07 per barrel, and it's gone up quite significantly from $66. Went up 40% in about 6 months. That is pretty significant. And yes, as the dollar is diminished in use in terms of international trade, you're going to see the price of commodities go up in terms of dollars. Price of commodities like oil and other stuff. Price of imports are going to go up as well. So that's what's going to happen in the future, and that translates to what? More inflation, right? So it's gonna get tougher living in the United States. If you want to maintain your standard of living, either you find a job that pays you more, like you go to school, you go to university and study something that will pay you more. You become an engineer, or a pharmacist, or a doctor, or a nurse, or whatever, a CPA or whatever, or something like that, and you get a job that pays you more, or you go to trade school, you become a mechanic or something, you become a plumber or whatever, electrician, get more skills so that you could make more money, or you work 2 to 3 jobs to make more money to cope with the cost of living expenses. And I think that's the only way people are gonna be able to keep their heads above water. Either you work more, if there are a lot of employment opportunities, you downsize in the type of home that you get, or you get a better job or a better career. So those are my thoughts, and if you have any thoughts of your own, just leave them in the comment section. Okay, Thanks for watching my Ace 1000 KS 1975 signing out.